You know what's wild? People always say, you can't have it both ways in life. But honestly, I was living proof they were completely wrong. My name's Naomi. I'm 26. And for 3 months straight, I had what felt like the dream setup any girl could imagine. There was Andrew, this ridiculously good-looking, well-off guy working at some corporate tower downtown. We had this effortless, casual arrangement where he'd spoil me at fancy restaurants and upscale spots. The sex was unreal, and there was zero pressure or unnecessary drama. And then there was Theo, my ex of 6 years, who I remained close with after we split about 9 months earlier. I know a lot of people think it's strange to stay tight with an ex, but Theo and I just clicked. As friends, we'd meet for dinner once a week, text constantly, call each other when life got stressful. Honestly, he understood me better than anyone else ever had. From the very beginning, when I started hanging out with Andrew, I was upfront about my bond with Theo. I told him we saw each other regularly, that we were still close, and Andrew acted like it was no big deal. He literally said, "Cool, whatever," when I mentioned it, and I loved that about him. No jealousy, no trying to control me, no rules about who I could or couldn't see. I could maintain my friendship with Theo while also enjoying this exciting new thing with Andrew. Theo and I kept up our normal rhythm. Weekly dinners, daily good morning and good night texts, long phone calls when one of us had a rough day. I'd be lying if I said I never wondered if maybe we'd end up together again. But at that point, the balance worked perfectly for all of us. Andrew was thrilling, funny, generous, amazing. In bed, Theo was the one I leaned on for emotional support and who knew my entire story. Why would I have to pick just one? It all felt natural and easy. I could grab dinner with Theo on Tuesday, spend Wednesday night at Andrew's place, and nobody was upset or left out. Andrew got a fun, carefree woman in his life, without any messy strings, and I got to hold on to the most important friendship I'd ever had while exploring something new and exciting. It honestly felt like the best of both worlds. Andrew never grilled me with questions about Theo, never made shady remarks or acted controlling. I really believed he was mature enough to get that healthy people can keep platonic friendships with their exes. I thought he was different from those insecure guys who try to monitor and control their girlfriend's every move. But then things took a sharp turn. 2 weeks ago, Andrew and I were at his apartment after a night out. He'd taken me to a pricey steakhouse. We'd had incredible sex, and I was lying there completely content, thinking everything between us was perfect. That's when he blindsided me by bringing up getting more serious. I was still buzzed from the expensive wine, still soaking in all the attention, and honestly, I felt flattered that someone like Andrew wanted to commit to me. Having a man that attractive and successful want exclusivity felt like validation. But then his words kept coming, and suddenly everything shifted. "I'd be down for that," he said, "if you're willing to cut your ex completely out of your life." I laughed out loud, thinking he had to be kidding. Cut Theo out. Theo, who had been my rock through everything. Theo, who knew me better than I sometimes knew myself. I started carefully explaining that Theo and I were only friends now, that there was no romantic or sexual tension at all. But Andrew wasn't budging. His face stayed dead serious. He told me he doesn't date women who go to dinner with their exes. He doesn't see or grab drinks with his exes, so to him, it was reasonable and fair to expect the same from me. Reasonable and fair. This man I'd known for 3 months thought he could decide who I was allowed to be friends with. Tried my hardest to stay calm and logical. I explained Theo helped me survive the darkest, hardest chapter of my life. That cutting him off would be cruel and totally unfair to someone who had done nothing wrong. But Andrew just repeated the same line like a robot. If you want an exclusive relationship with me, you need to cut him out completely, he said. It like he was offering some amazing deal instead of making a controlling, ridiculous demand. When I told him no way in hell was I going to throw away a 6-year friendship for a guy I'd been casually seeing for 3 months, he just shrugged. Fine. We'll keep it casual. Just like that, like my feelings didn't matter at all. That's when I snapped. Here was this guy acting like he was doing me a favor by keeping me around for sex when I wouldn't cave to his demands. I told him straight up he was insecure and controlling, that real relationships are built on trust, not ultimatums. A truly secure man would accept that friendships with exes can be healthy. But Andrew just sat there calm, insisting he wasn't insecure, just holding firm boundaries. What total nonsense. It was obvious this was jealousy and control disguised as principle. I even pointed out how he still follows almost all of his exes on Instagram, likes their posts, and had literally told me he'd grabbed coffee with some old flame last month. All of a sudden, his so-called firm boundaries didn't seem consistent or even that important. That's totally different, he insisted, without giving a real reason. Different? In what way? Because he's a man, and you get one set of rules while I get another. Because your exes somehow don't matter, but mine are automatically a threat. The whole thing blew up into a huge, heated fight. I was desperately trying to get him to see how hypocritical and irrational he was being. Cutting Theo off would mean hurting someone who had never once done anything wrong. Theo had been nothing but respectful about the situation. He never stirred up drama, never tried to get between me and Andrew, never even asked awkward questions about what was going on between us. Andrew's problem wasn't with Theo's behavior at all. It was entirely about his own insecurity and inability to trust. And instead of dealing with that like an adult, he wanted me to throw away my most valuable friendship just to soothe his ego. The more I tried explaining things calmly and logically, the more rigid and unreasonable he became. He kept spitting out the same line like a broken record. If you want a relationship with me, you cut him off. If not, we stay casual. As if those were the only 2 options in the world. As if he was doing me some huge favor by keeping me around at all. By the end of that awful night, I was crying out of pure frustration and exhaustion, while he stayed cold and unmoved. He drove me home in complete, icy silence, and I knew something fundamental between us had shifted. The weeks that followed were absolute misery. Andrew stuck to his word. We stayed casual, but everything between us felt completely different. He still wanted to sleep together whenever it fit his schedule, but suddenly the nice dinners turned into greasy fast food. The constant texting turned sporadic and flat. What used to feel like excitement and pursuit turned into me constantly wondering when, or if, I'd hear from him. It felt like I was being punished for having boundaries and refusing to be controlled. Meanwhile, I kept venting to Theo, and he was endlessly supportive. He reminded me again and again that a man truly worth my time wouldn't try to dictate who I could or couldn't be friends with. You've known me for 6 years, he pointed out. You've known him for 3 months. The math speaks for itself. That's when it finally sank in how right Theo had been all along, and how wrong Andrew really was. But I also started noticing things about Andrew that cut deep. He'd take hours to reply to my texts when he used to answer right away. He'd make subtle digs about my clothes or hair that felt more critical than playful. He'd casually bring up other women, pointing out how easygoing and drama-free they were, as if to remind me that I was a problem he had to deal with. It was obvious he was punishing me for not caving to his demands. The worst part was the switch. Acting totally normal and sweet when we were together, then cold and careless the moment we weren't. He'd cancel plans last minute, show up late without apologizing, forget things I'd told him that used to matter. It was like he was showing me exactly what casual meant to him, that I didn't deserve even basic consideration. I started feeling like I was constantly auditioning for his attention instead of enjoying being with him. But whenever I pointed out how much he'd changed, he'd throw it back at me. "This is what you chose," he'd say. "If you want better, you know what to do." Everything came to a breaking point last week when Andrew and I ran into his friend Gavin downtown. Gavin was there with his girlfriend, and they were being adorably couple-wise, laughing, teasing, talking about their plans. I could see Andrew watching them, and for a split second, I thought maybe he finally got it. Maybe he finally saw what we could have if he'd just let go of his controlling hang-ups. But then Gavin asked straight out if we were official, and Andrew immediately said, "Nah, Naomi's got way too much baggage for that." Baggage. He called my friendship with Theo baggage right there in front of his friend, like I wasn't even sitting at the same table. I forced a smile and laughed it off because I didn't want to make a scene, but inside I was burning with humiliation and rage. As soon as Gavin walked away, I turned on Andrew. "How dare you call Theo baggage? How dare you make me sound like damaged goods in front of your friends? How dare you act like I'm the problem when you're the one being unreasonable?" He just shrugged it off, totally casual. "Well, isn't it baggage?" he said, like it was obvious. "You won't move forward because you're stuck in the past." That's when I exploded. I told him he was manipulative and emotionally abusive, dangling the idea of a real relationship while treating me like garbage. I told him a secure man wouldn't be threatened by a friendship, and that Theo probably scared him because Theo actually knew how to treat me with genuine respect. Andrew just sat there listening with that same maddening calm expression until he opened his mouth and said something that made my blood boil. "You're literally proving my point right now," he said coldly. "You care more about defending him than building a real future with me. Like I was supposed to apologize for standing up for myself and for my best friend. Like wanting basic respect was some outrageous demand. Since that awful fight, we haven't spoken a word. And honestly, I'm starting to believe Andrew never wanted a serious relationship in the first place. He just wanted to test if I'd choose him over Theo. And when I refused to play his twisted little game, he decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. It's been 4 months since Andrew and I cut ties, and I expected to feel free of his toxic, controlling behavior. But life had other cruel plans I didn't see coming. First, Gavin's girlfriend let it slip that Andrew started dating someone new just 2 weeks after our final blow-up. A woman from his office. The kind he bragged came with no drama. From the way she said it, it was obvious Andrew had been telling his friends I was difficult, painting me as some unreasonable girl who couldn't handle simple boundaries. But the part that really broke me, Theo changed too, right around that same time. The same Theo who'd been my rock through the whole Andrew mess, who'd listened to me vent night after night, who'd sworn he'd always be there. Suddenly he was slow to reply to texts, bailing on our weekly dinners with flimsy excuses that didn't add up. When I finally pressed him, he dropped a bomb that shattered everything. He'd been secretly dating someone for a month and a half. Someone special, someone he thought he might actually be falling for. I didn't want to tell you while you were hurting from Andrew, he said, like secrecy was consideration instead of betrayal. Then came the knife twist. We need distance. Madison isn't comfortable with how close we are. Madison. Even her name sounded plain and easy, like Andrew's perfect new office girlfriend. And just like that, Theo, my closest friend for 6 years, was choosing a woman he barely knew over our entire history. The same friendship I just sacrificed a relationship to protect. I begged him to see how unfair it was, how I'd literally lost Andrew, because I refused to cut Theo off, only for Theo to throw me away anyway. But Theo just said he knew it was hard for me, but he needed to focus on his future, a future that somehow didn't include me. When I demanded to know what made Madison so special that she got to dictate his friendships when I never once had, he insisted she wasn't making the call. I am, he said, because I want something lasting with her. Something lasting, apparently, meant erasing me completely. So here I am, 5 months later, utterly alone in ways I never imagined. Andrew's posting happy photos with his drama-free girlfriend, while Theo moved in with Madison after just 4 months and blocked me on everything after I poured my heart out in messages he apparently saw as pathetic. My other friends are sick of hearing about it, telling me to move on and find someone new. But none of them get it. I didn't betray anyone. I stayed loyal to my best friend and got punished for it. I refused to bow to control and ended up losing everything that mattered most. The worst part came just last week, when I spotted Andrew at a coffee shop near work. He looked completely at peace, like I'd never even crossed his mind. Our eyes met, and all I got was a polite nod before he turned back to his conversation. Like I was a stranger. Like those 3 months we shared meant nothing at all. Meanwhile, I'm still here, wrecked, trying to understand how everything collapsed just because I refused to let someone dictate my life. I guess that's my punishment for believing I could hold on to both love and friendship. Turns out, no matter how modern dating pretends to be, you really can't have it all.